Hi everyone, this is Miss Engler. I want to show you guys in video form how I want you to graph. So this is for AIM 1.3, and this will be embedded in your slides so you guys can watch this later at your own time as well. So when you first go to graph anything, you need to figure out what you're graphing and why you might want to graph it. So in this chart here, we have a bunch of different numbers for time and a bunch of different numbers for temperature. So first we need to look at these data and see, okay, which is going to be my independent and which will be my dependent. So time, we cannot control. You can't say, I'm going to slow down time. It just doesn't work. Or I'm going to speed up time, unless you're using like a song or something, then you can, but you're not really altering time. So time is going to be our independent. Temperature is something we can change. We can do different things to change temperature. So if we're talking about our refrigerator, we can turn a dial and turn down the temperature in our refrigerator. Or if you're taking a shower, you can change the temperature of the water by turning the dial. So our temperature is going to be dependent. So we want to figure out which axes these go on. The way that I remember it is independent it's like a relationship. If you break up, you are now X's. So you are independent of one another. That means our dependent is going to be Y. So if you did break up, you think back when you were dependent on that other person and you ask, why? Right? So those are our two X's. Or two axes, rather. So now I want to start making my graphing space. I want to make sure that I have room on my axes so that I can both label the axes and I can add units on the axes. So I have my two axes. I have my x-axis and I have my y-axis. My x data are in our time, and those are in, I did this again, time, and it's in minutes. I'm going to move this down so that I have space to write my other labels. So this is time in minutes, and our temperature, I'm going to abbreviate that because I'm lazy. Temp is in degrees Celsius. We want to be specific with our time in minutes and our temperature in degrees Celsius because time can also be measured using hours, seconds, days, years, etc. Let's just be specific. Okay, so that's step one. You have to draw and label your axes. This is going to be our second step. I want to show you guys how to actually label these axes. So that was a little bit of a spoiler alert. Let's go ahead and draw in what this is going to look like. So if I want to figure out what I should label my axes in terms of our intervals, I need to look first at the numbers that we have. So we have 20 minutes as our max and 0 as our minimum for minutes. And it goes up to 10 spaces. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 spaces on our x-axis. So I'm going to take our 20 minutes. That's how many minutes we need to show. 20 minutes over 10 lines. And what that's going to tell us is that there will be 2 minutes for every one line, which means each of these lines, this is going to be 2 minutes, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, and 20 minutes, all accounted for on the line. Our y-axis is a little trickier. I'm going to say that we should show all 45 degrees Celsius. We have 45 degrees Celsius as our max and 21.5 degrees Celsius as our minimum. That's going to be a little bit annoying to graph, so I'm just not going to. I'm going to make this graph look better in my own opinion. So we're going to take that 45 degrees Celsius, and if you're looking, there are 10 spaces in between here and the top of the graph. I'm going to go ahead and change that to 9 lines or spaces because I want nice even numbers that I don't have to think about math-wise. So 45 degrees Celsius over 9 lines. That means that we are going to have 5 degrees Celsius per line. That means, per line, that means that my graph on the y-axis is going to go up by 5 degrees Celsius every space. So that's going to be 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, and then 45. And then we have some space at the top. We also need to title our graph. So an easy way to title your graph is just to take the x variable versus the y variable. So I take time versus, and we should put our units in there, so we're specific, time in minutes versus temperature. Again, I'm abbreviating for space, and that is in degrees Celsius. So now that we have our graph labeled and our axes are labeled, everything is ready to go. Now we want to actually go through and plot our data. So we're going to look first at our first x variable here. You always want to go in order so that you're not jumping all over the place and lose your spot. So let's start with 0. 0 minutes and 45 degrees Celsius. So I have 0 minutes here and 45 degrees Celsius there. I'm going to put a dot. Ooh, I erased it. I'm going to put a dot on the line to mark my data. Always use a pencil in case you put anything in the wrong place. So our next time is 5 minutes. I have 4 minutes and 6 minutes. 5 minutes is going to fall somewhere in between. I like to mark and show where I should go so I don't lose my spot. Then we need 36 degrees Celsius. So I look at the closest number interval, that's 35, and there's 40. So 36 is going to be closer to 35 than it is to 40, so I'm going to think 36 is actually, it'll be a fifth of the way. It'll be about there. So I'm going to see where these connect. I'm going to drag my pencil or pen, whatever, up, and I'm going to see that they fall right here. That's where our data point should be. Next, 10 minutes and 29 degrees Celsius. Here's my 10 minutes. I'm going to move up. There's 30 right here on this line. There's 30 on this line. And then I'm going to see, make sure I'm still on my 10. I'm going to go just a little below 30, so I show 29 degrees Celsius. Next, 15 minutes, 24 degrees Celsius. 14, there's 15 on this line, marking my spot. And then it should be 24 degrees Celsius. There's 25, if you can read my handwriting. And 24 is going to be just below the line. So I'm going to hit a dot right about there. Good. And then 20 minutes. So here's 20 minutes, and we should be at 21.5 degrees Celsius for that. So I'm at 20 here. Going to go up. There's 20 on this line. And notice that 24 degrees is also in this box. I want to make sure that it is just a little bit lower and make sure that they are both where they should be. So that's about 21.5 degrees Celsius, and that is about 24 degrees Celsius. So now that you're done, you have all of these plotted. The next thing we want to do, our last step, our second to last step, is to draw a line of best fit. So I'm going to use purple for this. So a lot of times, if you look at data, we want things to make sense. So when we look at data, we want things to fit on a straight line. So if I try that, I'm going to look at 45 degrees Celsius and then at the 21.5 degrees Celsius. I'm going to draw a line in between those two, and let's see how well that fits our data. Yeah, it doesn't fit the data. That's the issue. So it may hit that 45 and that 21.5 degrees Celsius, but our other three data points don't hit the graph. So I'm going to get rid of that. And what you're going to see is that the line that should fit in order to connect these is going to be a nice, smooth, rounded shape. Always use pencil because you need to be able to erase. So, sorry, I use this with my tablet pen, so the line isn't as beautiful as it should be. But all these points are actually hitting each other. Now, our last step, we need to look and see if it makes sense. So, if I'm getting points on these lines, let's say that I plotted 6 more points. Okay, I'm going to do 3 because I'm lazy. Let's say I plotted 3 more points, and I have one up here. I have one here, and then I have one here, and then one here. Okay, okay, now we only have 3 extra lines. So those data points don't fall on this line of best fit. If they don't, the first thing you want to do is check to make sure that they were plotted in the right place. So this guy could have actually been this point. You just had a brain fart and you read the graph wrong, but then you plot it and it goes where it's supposed to. So those are all the steps on how you can graph.